Hello and welcome to this video presented to you by Vivek IAS Career Academy. Today we speak about English, its importance in cracking any competitive exam that you ever want to give. What I get from everyone who comes to class is that English is the least important of the subjects that anyone needs to prep for any competitive exam. Let's bust that myth today, shall we? If you sit down to think about it, English forms the very foundation and basis of any competitive exam you want to give. If you want to excel in that competitive exam, to have a command over the language is more important than absolutely anything else. Whether it's giving your papers at the general studies level, or when you go on to write your essays, or even for that matter when you go on to give your interviews, a good command over the language is absolutely essential for you to crack it and make that difference to make you one notch above everyone else. The most common question that I get asked with respect to the English language is, how do we get better at English? How do we speak better? How do we write better? How do we know words that we don't know before? It's a very simple answer to that question. Just begin to read the language. Where do you begin? Is the next question I get. Very simple, you're prepping for the UPSC, right? Pick up a newspaper, preferably the Hindu. Their editorials are absolutely beautiful. Start reading their editorials every day. It's going to take you a while to get a hang of them, understand the words that the editors are using, why they are using them, understanding sentence structure. It's all right. Take your time, read them every day. For the words that you don't understand or are new to you, please use this thing that we all used to use while growing up. It's called the dictionary. Now it's available on your phones as well, All you need to do is search a word on Google and bam, there you have it. Use a dictionary, figure out what the word means, and try and understand the root of the word, where it's coming from. There are very simple things in the English language, if you go to see, which are kind of self-explanatory. The more you read, the more these things kind of become clearer to you. So I really encourage and urge you to pick up anything that you find and simply read. Just read and watch yourself. You will realize how much your vocabulary is improving as the days go by. The second thing that my teachers always taught me, and is one of my favorite things to tell my students now, is when you find a word you don't know the meaning of and then you write it down, it reinforces that in your head. It may just stay with you a little longer than it otherwise would if you just read about it and forgot about it. If you want that word to stay even longer in your memory, use it. Use it in a sentence multiple times in a day. It may be as simple as a word as astounding. When you're having a conversation with someone and you're talking about, let's say, the number of COVID cases on the rise, you say it's astounding how many cases are being reported every day. It's a simple word. It's the first one that came to my mind, but there can be a lot more that you come across you don't know. The trick is keep using it over and over and over again, and before you know it, it's going to be part of your vocabulary, and that's how your vocabulary is going to grow every single day. The second tip I'm going to give you is still along the same lines, wherein when you pick up the editorial to read it, imbibe it, understand it, and try to make a shorter version of it in your own words and put it down in a notebook. This is going to help you twofold. One, it's definitely going to help improve your vocabulary and your writing skills, because you're going to concise a passage that's, let's say, 10 lines long into a 3-line passage. Now this is called a précis, which is when you concise a passage to 1/3 of its length. And it's a brilliant way to practice the language, because you realize how you can use the language most impactfully to bring out the best with the least number of words. So this is a skill that's really going to develop your English language skills as a whole. The second thing that it's going to help you with is when you look back at your notes as you're prepping closer to your exam date, what you've done is made a concise version of all the current events that were spoken about across all the editorials, which becomes Super easy for you to skim through instead of going back and reading everything in detail all over again. So this is not just a tip for your English, but also a tip for your quick prep before your examinations. Tip number 3, English grammar. For those of you who believe that it's okay to talk in English, chal jayega, please let go of that attitude before you appear for your exams. As Indians, we are very comfortable slipping into Hindi, English bolte bolte. While that's fine to do on an everyday basis and with your friends and family, it's not the right thing to do when you're prepping to be an officer for the country, right? So I would suggest that you start focusing a lot on English grammar, on sentence structure. Make a conscious effort to have conversations in English, because one of the other hurdles I have seen a lot of people face is that as Indians especially, we tend to think in Hindi and then our output is in English. So what happens is we are transliterating most of the time and not translating. And when we transliterate, we kind of say the wrong thing because sometimes things just lose their meaning when they are not translated and are transliterated instead. So let me give you an example of transliteration. If I were thinking in Hindi and I said कि मैंने आज रोटी खाई, and I were to transliterate that into English, I would say I today roti ate, which someone may understand, but grammatically is absolutely incorrect and the sentence has no structure at all. If I were to translate the same thing, I would say I ate a roti today, which sounds so much nicer, which is very simple grammar and has a very simple sentence structure. So to change the way we've been doing something for very long is difficult, but it has to start with baby steps, which is why I say start having conversations in English with people who you converse with the most, with your friends, with your teachers, with your family. Start writing a little bit in English on your own. Maybe start maintaining a diary and writing your thoughts. That would help later when you come to the stage of writing your essays for your exams. So now that we have a basic understanding of how to really build on our language and how to increase our vocabulary, get better at the language in general, let's come to a more specific subject which forms the basis really for your portions in the comprehension. Is derived from the English word comprehend, which means simply to understand. So while comprehension is an integral part of the English syllabus, what it's really testing is your thinking capacity, your logical thinking, yes, and your capacity to imbibe and understand what you read. It's very easy for us to read through something, to read through many pages, and at the end of it figure, but what did I just read? Because I don't understand now what was said earlier. So what comprehension passages really do is try and test that understanding to see whether you remember what you've read at the beginning when you reach the end of a passage, whether you're understanding as you're going along, or it finds you going back to read over and over and over again, thereby wasting too much time and not giving you enough time to finish your paper. So to work on understanding while you're reading, I go back to the initial points I made about reading the Hindu editorials, writing down words whose meanings you don't understand. There will still be words when you read comprehension passages, possibly in your papers, that are new to you. And I often see that when people come across words or anything that is new to them, it suddenly puts a break in their minds and it gives you this sense of feeling very lost and not knowing that you have it in you to figure out what's written in that passage. So with extensive reading, what happens is not only do you learn new words, you also figure out what words mean, at least approximately, when you've read the sentence or sentences around it. This is a very important skill that you need to actively pick up while you're reading to be able to attack comprehensions in your papers. You are not going to be able to have access to a dictionary when you're doing your papers, but that doesn't mean that it leaves you high and dry. Now, when you pick up a comprehension passage, there is a few basic things or little tricks that I can give you, which will help you approach it with an easier mind. One of the first tricks that I have seen in past papers is that most comprehension passages are really parts of Hindu editorials that have been incorporated with a couple of questions or a question. So the more editorials you read, the more you understand how they are written and what is trying to be said. Now, talking about comprehension passages in general, how do you approach a passage when you're given one as a comprehension? Now, generally, anything that you read or the general components of a passage are built on 4 building blocks. First is the point, wherein which is the most important piece of information that the author is trying to convey to the reader through the passage. Now, it is your job as the reader to find this point while you read the passage. And believe me, it's not very difficult. It's only a skill that you need to develop, which will come with practice. The second building block is called the background. Now, this background is the information that the writer gives the reader to understand the point. So it's going to take you to the point. The third thing is support. Support is additional information given by the author in terms of evidence or examples in order to support the point that he or she is making. The last building block is called implications, which are the after effects of the main point or the end results or consequences. These are very easy to understand when compared to the building blocks, other 3 building blocks that I just spoke about, because this is an inference to the point that is being made as a fact in a comprehension. So once you're able to break down a passage into these 4 components, it's going to be very easy for you to understand what the author is saying and then apply it in the question that's being asked to you. With practice, you will also realize that there is a fixed kind of questions that can be asked to you, and also a fixed kind of answers that will be given to you in options. Now, once you understand that there are these type of questions and these type of answers, it simply becomes as easy as solving a mathematics problem, and you will realize that there is only one correct answer. When it comes to solving a comprehension, there are only 2 strategies that exist. One, you read the passage before you answer the questions, or rather before you read the questions. And 2, you read the questions and then look for the answers in the passage. I would strongly recommend that you use the first strategy every single time. Now I give you the reason for this. The human mind tends to get influenced by whatever it comes across first. If you are to read your question and your answers before you go to the passage, you are going to be influenced by what you read, and you are more likely to pick the wrong answer because your mind will interpret it wrongly when you read the passage after the question. Please read the passage first. Trust your mind to understand and imbibe and comprehend what you have read. There will be times that you will feel like all the answers sound the same. When that happens, close your eyes, take a deep breath, and go back to the answers again. With enough practice, you will reach a point where you will need to read a comprehension passage just one time, and with one look at the question, you are going to know what the answer is. Yes, there will be times that it will be very difficult to find find the right answer and put your finger on it in a minute. That's okay. There's a strategy for that too. When you don't know what the right answer is, simply use the method of elimination or omission. Look at the answers after you've read the passage and strike out the ones which you think are absolutely wrong. You will always strike out at least 2 of the 4 answers where you're left with only 2 to choose from and one is right and wrong. If you're still having trouble, go back and read the passage again. And believe me, you will find the right answer. So you see, like everything else that we do in life, even comprehensions happen best when practiced most. So start reading, start practicing. Put all these tips to the test and I'm sure they'll work for you. If you want more, we're having classes at the academy. Come join us.